Hello, welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live spoiler-free review of Spider-Man No Way Home. I wasn't planning on doing one of these, but I just came back from seeing the movie, and I had some things I wanted to say about it. I'm going to try to be as spoiler-free as I possibly can. Um, yeah, as I possibly can. Going to try to be spoiler free for those who haven't seen it. Um, so yeah, this movie has been unbelievably hyped. Now I was interested in seeing it for sure, but to be honest, like I was more hyped personally for the Doctor Strange multiverse of madness. It was been more my thing, but this felt like I kind of felt like to me this felt like it would be a nice lead up into that, like and further things sort of pushing that forward. Another sort of great sort of dive into the multiverse, but when I went online, apparently a lot of people were hyping this up as like an amazing like sort of masterpiece, and some people even going as far to say this is the best movie ever made, or the best superhero movie ever made, or the best Marvel movie ever made. Um, where I don't know, I was a bit skeptical about all that, but I try not to like predetermine or pre-decide how I'm going to feel about a movie before I see it. Like I have had my mind changed on many occasions where I thought this movie wouldn't be that great or it would suck, and I ended up loving it. Or, of course, I've been disappointed by movies in the past. So it's not like I keep it up in mind when I watch a movie. My mind can be changed by a movie when I see it. So, did I think that this was the best movie ever made? No, not even close. Not by a long shot. Did I think that this was the best superhero movie ever made? Again, no, no, not really. And I would firmly disagree with those who thought that it was. Now, did I think this was the best Marvel movie ever made? Again, no. I think they were playing better. And as my sister had mentioned that she thought it was the best, like standalone superhero movie. Like if you take out like of group movies like Avengers and whatnot, like something that just has the title of one superhero. So do I think it's the best one of those? No. Do I think it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made? No, I don't. I actually prefer Spider-Man Homecoming is still my favorite Spider-Man movie. Now, do I think that this was the best Marvel movie to come out this year? That I'm gonna say yes. So I'll give it that. it did. It was better than Eternals, Black Widow, and Shang Chi. I did like it better than any of those movies, which admittedly is not a very high bar. But I did enjoy Shang Chi, and Eternals was pretty good too. Black Widow is no, but so I will say I did like it. Now I'm not saying that I hated the movie. I really didn't. I did enjoy it, and I probably would put this in the upper echelon of Marvel movies. Like, I'm not gonna say, oh, this is like a Thor, Dark World, or Iron Man 2 or Black Widow. Like, no, I'm not gonna. No way would I put it down in that sort of, because I don't think there's any such thing as a really shitty Marvel movie, but there's been a lot of mediocre ones, and I would definitely put this above it. I would even put it go as far as to put it above fan favorites like Captain America: Civil War and Avengers: Infinity Wars. But those who know me know I have major issues with those films, and I don't like them as much as everyone else. So let me assure you that's not the case here with Spider-Man: No One Home. It's not like it's not going to be that situation where everyone else loves and raves them, and I say, no, actually, I don't like them. I think those movies have major issues. That's not the case with this movie. I just don't feel the hype with it. I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a great movie. I had a great time. As I said, this would probably be in my top 10, if not top 10, then top 15 MCU movies. It's in the higher of echelon. But honestly, I like No Way Home and Homecoming better than this. Now, specifically, let me get to Homecoming because one of the things I said about Spider-Man Homecoming when it first came out, and one of the reasons why I loved it so much, is that it had a really sort of low stakes personal feel to it. It was, and that to me is what made it unique, particularly in the superhero and in the MCU and the Marvel world. Is too many of these superhero comic book movies have to have like the world's gonna end. There's a big sky beam and a faceless monster army, and there's a villain that looks exactly like our hero fighting, and they're gonna destroy the world, and everyone's lives are at stake. They definitely did that in the Eternals. Oh yes, they did. Um, and I feel like it was like kind of refreshing for me that Homecoming came along, and it was just a kid at high school who was going to a dance, and even the villain of the film was like just a guy trying to provide for his family and selling and trying to steal shit from to sell in the black market. He wasn't like this world must end like super villain with Skybeam and all that shit. And I really appreciate that tone with Homecoming. And I feel like this movie is trying to be all grand. It is trying to be epic. It is trying to be like, oh, look at all that. And I think it kind of takes away from it, uh, honestly, a little bit. But I will say, in the positive bracket, I will say I did much prefer MJ. Like this is one thing I will. I know my sister's going to completely disagree with me on this movie because she did love it. But the one thing that I think we do agree on, the one thing I will agree with her on is I love Zendaya. I think Zendaya is amazing. I too, like she said that she'll go see anything that she's in. I feel the same way. Absolutely love Zendaya. Particularly love her as MJ. I thought she was much better in Far From Home and No Way Home than she was in Homecoming. Homecoming, she barely appeared, more like a cameo, and she was my favorite thing about actually. I would say both films, both Far From Home and No Way Home. She was my favorite thing about those films. I love her interactions with Tom Holland as Peter Parker, and I absolutely think it's amazing. I think there's no exception here. Um, However, like there's been a lot of, and I guess there's your mileage may vary depending on your personal experience, I guess, because I've been seeing a lot of reviews that ask the question about nostalgia. Is this too much of a member berry sort of nostalgia trip? Trying to rely too much on the nostalgia of previous people. And I've heard a lot of opinions. Most opinions I've heard seem to err on the side of no, that's not that it actually does, of course, play on nostalgia, but it does it in a way that services the plot and works for the story. Now, again, I'm not going to give any spoilers away except for stuff that you've seen in the trailers. Stuff in the trailers I'm going to consider fair game. And so in the trailers, you do know there are going to be characters from previous iterations of Spider-Man, previous to the Tom Holland one, that are going to be in this film. And do I think that place is trying to play on nostalgia too much? I think yes. Honestly, I think it did kind of. I do get the feeling, I got to be honest, that fans of those earlier Spider-Man iterations are going to love this film a lot more because just getting into my personal backstory, I didn't like him at all. Like back in 2000, 2001, wherever the first Spider-Man came out with Tobey Maguire, I went and saw it, and I was like, "This movie sucks. I don't like it." And I think I saw the sequels like on DVD or whatever, and like these movies suck too. I don't like them. And then the whatchamacallit, the other one, Andrew Garfield movies. I only saw the first one. I didn't even bother with the second one, but I saw a lot of spoiler stuff about it, so I know what happens in it. But and I was like, this sucks even more. And it wasn't until Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man came out that I actually liked the Spider-Man film. Before I did not like a Spider-Man film. It was too comic booky for me. I didn't appreciate it, and I'm not. I have no dog in a fight when it comes to Spider-Man. I was never a huge Spider-Man fan growing up as a kid. I mean, I did read his comics, but I was more into the X-Men personally. I thought Spider-Man that was always hyped as the big Marvel thing, which I always thought he was a little overrated in that regard. So I don't have that sort of Spider-Man nostalgia coming into it. In fact, I saw a review for this movie that said that they liked it because the two previous Spider-Man home movies, Homecoming and Far From Home, felt more like MCU movies than they did like Spider-Man movies. And as soon as I heard that, like that was a strike against it for me because those are the only reasons why I like those first two movies is because they felt more like MCU movies than they did like Spider-Man movies. So when I heard, oh, this is gonna feel more like a Spider-Man movie than an MCU movie, that's a takedown, and I totally think that was the case. It did feel more like a Spider-Man movie, and I liked it less because of it. I want more MCU in my Spider-Man. It's the only reason why I like these Spider-Man movies, if I'm being honest. And again, this is all my comes down to my personal feelings and my history with the films, and so that's why it's not like. But if you can have like stuff like nostalgia for earlier stuff still work for the story, but that's why I would argue with people who say it does because to some degree it does, but for the most part, I think there were a lot of moments in this film where I felt nothing because I had no attachment to the previous iterations of Spider-Man, and it feels like it was kind of playing off of banking on you must have this prior attachment to it, otherwise it's not really going to mean much. And I got to be honest, sticking with the negatives, I think they had too many characters in this film, and even the ones that because they had a few throwaway characters they didn't focus on, which is fine. But if you have that many characters, you have to have throwaway characters you don't focus on. I had no issue with that. But even the ones they did focus on, I really didn't connect with them, and I felt like there wasn't enough time spent for me to sort of buy their placement in this universe to this current iteration of Spider-Man. And you know what? I love like parallel universe stories and stories having to do with multiverse and different things could happen. It's just that's my bag. I absolutely love that. That's why I loved What If, and I was all there for it. Um, but in this movie, it just felt like an excuse to have characters from other iterations of Spider-Man. Like that's all it was. Like it's funny how there's a whole multiverse, and all we get is, you know, previous Spider-Man villains that we've seen in other movies. It was a. I think the Flash word to me that kept coming through my mind while watching this movie is gimmick. A lot of it felt gimmicky. And a lot of it is like, ooh, look at this, and look at this guy, look at this guy, oh, look at that guy, oh, this guy's here, isn't that cool? It felt very gimmicky. And now I think I need to reiterate that I liked this movie. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie. As I said, like the Zendaya of it all, like I love the relationship between Peter Parker and MJ. I thought Peter Parker's personal character story through this movie was done really well. Um, just to pull it back. So that's why I'm not saying this is again. I reiterate, this is not a terrible movie. I put it in the upper echelon of Marvel movies because of that, because Tom Holland's so great, because Zendaya is so great, and because the personal character story that they told through Peter Parker throughout the story, and of course, love seeing Doctor Strange and his interactions with Doctor Strange. Those all worked for me. I loved them, but the big, like the vastness of bringing in all these villains from previous Spider-Man movie, that more of interfered with my enjoyment of this film rather than enhanced it. Um, I do think this movie would have been better off if they reduced the amount of characters, if they reduced the scale a bit. Um, but I still enjoyed it. I still liked it. It's just that aspect of it, to me, it didn't do anything for it and kind of just interfered with the main plot. Now, there's something that happened. Again, I'm going to try to remain spoiler free, but there's something that happens halfway through the movie, around halfway through the movie, which I feel like they were it was intended to have a really huge emotional impact. Like you're supposed to get really sad and supposed to like bring you the tears or something, and it did nothing for me. In fact, I wish they didn't do it. I think it was a mistake for them to do it, and it felt very gimmicky to me. The word and again, this is something I know everyone and their mother is going to disagree with me on, uh, but I'm not gonna lie. That was my reaction. That is how I felt to it. In fact, when this happened, I was like, I felt anger because I was like, this is a bad storytelling decision. You shouldn't have done this. And I still kind of feel this way. And I know eventually I'm going to get over is after the movie sits with me and whatnot. But I didn't like it. And so, and for the rest of the movie, they were playing off of what was supposed to be the emotional impact of that moment, and it was determining the character journey for this character, and it I had no investment in it whatsoever because I think it was a mistake to do it. That but that's just me, and um, and then there's the thing with the ending is a bit questionable. Which of course, I'm not going to get into any spoilers any details at all about that because I'm avoiding spoilers. But again, I was a bit iffy on the final decision at the end. But even like the final big fight scene, I felt was a bit hokey and gimmicky, honestly. But again, getting back to positives, I will say there was a moment towards the end of the film that specifically referenced a previous iteration of Spider-Man that brought me to tears. That I loved. That it really hit me emotionally more than I thought, and it was resolving something that happened in one of those previous iterations of Spider-Man rather than the current iteration. And so that's so part of. So I wouldn't say I totally hated the callbacks to the previous iterations of Spider-Man because I didn't. I just think they went overboard with it, honestly, and I wish they would have toned it down. And it's weird for me seeing all these reviews were saying, "Oh, they didn't go overboard. This isn't too much member berries. Oh, this is just the perfect amount," because I don't feel that way. And it does make me wonder: is this just my personal opinion having to do on my taste, or the fact? Does this have to do with the fact that I have no investment in those previous iterations? Do the people saying that these iterations don't the member berries and the fan service doesn't at all interfere with the plot and contributes to it, do they actually have all this investment in these previous iterations that I do not have? I don't know. Maybe some do, maybe some don't. Maybe some just feel that it actually does work for the plot, and they just have a different opinion on the plot than I do. I'll be willing to give them that. Um, but me personally, I think this film definitely relies too much on nostalgia. I will say that I have a very strong feeling about that. It definitely plays too strongly on nostalgia, and it would have been better off they didn't have to get rid of it altogether, but just tone it back a bit. Um, and not be so much like, oh, isn't that cool? Isn't this moment so cool? A little less of that, and I would have appreciated it more. But despite all that, I still think, again, I'll reiterate, I'm repeating myself. I just want to reiterate that the character story that Peter Parker goes through in this movie was really well plot out. Tom Holland sells it. It really works. I love Zendaya. She really works, and so this movie, I will say, this movie has more heart than the previous two Spider-Man films, which is why I can see why some people would like it. But to me, it's not as well put together and too much interferes. The nostalgia and memories interfere with it too much. Where something like Homecoming, I feel, is a bit more straightforward and flows better and has a more concise. And I just love the fact that it's so small scale. It'll always be one of my favorite MCU movies because of that. And it is kind of sad to see this new Tom Holland Spider Man lose that low scale low stakes feeling to it, but whatever. I mean, you got to take it in different directions, and that's fine. But as I said, I feel like the film did have a lot more heart and emotional impact. But yeah, I don't think it's. I don't. I love it. I don't think it's the masterpiece everyone else says. So let me give my rating out of 10 for this film, and it's going to be an 8. Extremely good. So an 8 is a very high score. I sound so negative just because I had to. Sort of just because I don't give it a 10, like everyone else is giving it 10 or 11, and saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and so by comparison, I sound negative on it, but it's still an 8. That's still good. It's just like that's like the best of both worlds conundrum. That's what I'm going to call this from now on, because if you're not a Star Trek fan, there's the episode Next Generation that best of both worlds that everyone and their mother considers the best episode of Next Generation of Star Trek of all time, and everyone gives it a 10, and I give it an 8. And so everyone's, why do you hate that episode so much? It's like, I don't. I give it an 8. I just don't think it's the greatest thing ever like everyone else does. And I feel like I'm going to have a similar conversation about my feelings on this movie from now on. Because, yeah, as I said, this is definitely in the top 15 of MCU movies, probably top 10. Not top 5, though. But it is up there. So I did really, really enjoy it, and as I mentioned, I cried at moments in the film. It did hit me, but I don't think it's perfect. I think it has some flaws. But that is just my opinion, which is what I came on here to say. Now, I was going to see what was going on in the chat, and the answer to that appears to be nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Thank you so much for watching this video, checking it out. Be sure to check out my channel. Many other reviews, Star Trek, The Expanse, blah, 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 all that stuff. I'll see you guys next time.